Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have an official update on initial Iranian response to the U.S. strikes at Fordow and other nuclear facilities. The question on everyone's mind, would this be another chapter of Iranian political theater, or would they say, screw it, we just lost our best nuclear sites and the U.S. is trying to make it to where we can't develop a nuclear bomb. We don't care anymore. We will be attacking no holds bar. Well, it looks like, based off of this recent tweet, as you can see, Iran reportedly coordinated with the Qatari government, giving advance notice to minimize casualties. That's in reference to the one of the U.S. bases in Qatar being struck, and the actions of that in terms of them telling the Qatar government signal to me that this is political theater, that the regime in Iran felt like they needed to do something but didn't want to actually commit to an attack that would cause serious harm to a U.S. base. Now, maybe we're reading too much into this. It's developing. There's potential for strikes every hour. But based off of this, based off the fact that there was no casualties, I know there were reports of a few other bases being hit in Kuwait and possibly also Iraq. You can see this update. Iran launched 6 ballistic missiles, only 6, at bases in Qatar, with explosions being heard. And so we've got some really good news. You don't want to get too overzealous because these are developing situations, and we know that Trump called for the regime change yesterday. We can read into that. We can say how much hands-on Trump wants to be in terms of it. But Trump has already come out and said, we knew this was going to happen. They had a similar response to the Soleimani assassination, and there will be no U.S. retaliation to Iran targeting the U.S. bases. This was the hope. It's the weak Iran response, and we don't know what they're going to do over the next few hours, few days. Maybe they will up the ante. The problem with Iran is they're politically isolated right now. We've also got the oil slant to where now oil is down a few dollars trading today, which many people are shocked by. There's been rumors of the Strait of Hormuz being closed, which Iran cannot really do, but they can affect it and they can harass the strait to where it would definitely cause oil prices to spike possibly to $90 or $100 per barrel. Right now they're sitting around 73, 74. Oil has been tamed today. Trump is saying no U.S. retaliation in response to these strikes. The U.S. knew it was going to happen. They were ready for it. They were prepared. And a lot of the missiles were intercepted. Iran told Qatar about it, signaling that no, we don't want to completely destroy everything. We still want diplomacy. So maybe this can be worked out. Now, I know Trump called for the regime change, and there's been escalation, and there's rumors of all this different stuff about Trump using some tactical nuke. That came out last week, and everyone's like, it's World War III. But when you really look at the stuff that we've seen today, the oil prices calming, along with the weak response from Iran, along with Trump saying we knew this response was coming, we were ready for it, we're not retaliating. Trump confirming today he doesn't want a prolonged military operation in the Middle East, which to me says that it's more of a support that the U.S. will be playing for the citizens of Iran if they want to enact the regime change, although normally it would require some destabilization from an outside source, whether that's the United States, whether that's Israel. It came out that Israel now has also struck Fordow. That came out about 7 hours ago. So there's a lot of updates, but the core stuff today, and this is just these are like localized updates, meaning it's like just in today. Like big picture, who knows? I mean, they could strike significantly harder tomorrow and we could be looking at a U.S. response. But right now, the response from Iran is what we expected. Historically, this has been their response. They talk a lot of game. They're very weak in terms of actual military action. And that's what we're seeing right now. So it's weak military action. It's notifying the Qatari government, telling them we're going to strike to minimize casualties. that signals to us that this was political theater. They felt they had to respond, but you can't respond with full force, because if you do that, you just escalate it with the United States. Who, and remember, we can fly into the airspace undetected. They obviously cannot do that with the United States. You know, it would be easier for them to reach the bases, but even with the bases, if you strike one of them and you cause casualties, they are extremely fearful of a U.S.-Israel joint response. And so it seems like right now, you know, you don't want to say, well, we're entering a stage to where there potentially could be something that gets worked out, because I don't know what Iran would really agree to. But the response, at least at the time, signals political theater, signals what I had said would have been best case scenario, a weak Iran response with no U.S. retaliation, because the retaliation is really not needed if there's zero casualties and they just tried striking U.S. bases and many of the missiles got intercepted. There's no reason for it. And Trump said, we knew this was going to happen. We were ready for it. And so now Trump is saying, you know what, we don't want a prolonged operation here. We're going to support from the sidelines, which people will not like as well. Understandable. But the point is, you can't really call this a war. Everyone's calling this a war. New York Times, U.S. joins war. These are the updates that we need. CNN says Trump does not want more U.S. military engagement in the region. Quote, we knew they retaliate. They had a similar response after Soleimani. Advanced warning before the strikes, which is what happened. Limited missiles, all were outdated. So far, 0 U.S. injuries reported. And so you would figure that, considering, you know, this was a big escalation by the United States, there might be more of a response from Iran, and maybe there still will be. I mean, this was a big hit by the U.S. onto the nuclear facilities. You could also say, well, maybe they moved a lot of their enriched uranium out. What's going to happen in terms of that? Is the United States going to go try and search for it? We will have to see, but either way, you know, this initial reaction is pretty positive. And if you're Trump, I mean, you could say, we destroyed their fortress that took them over 10 years to build within a mountain, and we're done. And now we're going to try and work out some, but I mean, would Iran agree to that, really? Would they agree to some type of to peace deal or ceasefire with the United States and with Trump wanting major concessions in terms of any type of nuclear program? It's not going to exist for Iran, and Trump has said that. He's made it clear. And then after the strikes, we know that that's the real deal. They will not exist. They will not accept any type of Iranian deal that, you know, doesn't include zero enrichment and possibly destroying their other nuclear facilities and their centrifuges, and getting rid of all their enriched uranium. There's been talk based off of the aerial photos above Fordow. There is potential that a lot of the enriched uranium was moved because there would possibly be a different type of smoke arising from it if there was a lot of enriched uranium there. Look, we don't know exactly, but the point is, this is what we wanted to see. There's cautious optimism coming from this news. And look, it's just one update, because you keep getting these updates every few hours, every few days on what Iran is going to do. But you could say, well, maybe there's a chance here. I don't really know how Iran is going to agree to a deal at this point based on the U.S. military action, unless, you know, something happened. The thing is how do we know all of their enriched uranium is going? I mean, obviously it's not, because they have other facilities, but in any type of agreement, I mean, they could be hiding it. It's very hard to, there's haziness in terms of anything you do with Iran if they really want to cleanly wipe out their entire nuclear program. But the response from Iran so far has been very weak. Remember, they sent hypersonic missiles into Tel Aviv. And so you would figure there'd be maybe a bigger response, but I would imagine there's a lot of fear if you do have a big response against the U.S. base, whether it's in Qatar, whether it's in Iraq, you will face even more escalation from the U.S., and you're not going to defeat the U.S. We have too much money, and we have too highly sophisticated weapons, you're always going to lose that battle. Even if there's public pressure against Trump actually going into a war with Iran, and whether or not you want to characterize this as a war, I mean, it's U.S. strikes. Depends on your definition of a war. Depends on how long this lasts. But there still, to me, is haziness in terms of how Iran is going to accept something that the United States wants them to after the U.S. just struck them without more involvement by the United States to kind of get them onto their knees to accept a deal that the U.S. wants. Maybe Iran is already at that point to where they're running out of missiles. They're very weak. But even in that case, it seems like maybe it's time for the United States to step back from this situation. And if they want a regime change, Israel is still striking them. They're still striking Israel. Is there going to be a potential ceasefire somehow? It seems like almost impossible for there to be a ceasefire if the United States and Israel want regime change. Why would their regime agree to a ceasefire then? So the regime change is really the curveball in all of this that would create a prolonged situation. And how can a regime change happen in a country with 90 million people if there's no direct U.S.-Israeli troop involvement? Or would that even be possible? I mean, is that even feasible with how big Iran is? So these are all questions you have to ask, but the real thing about it is this is good updates. This is good news. It's an initial response. There's probably going to be more of a response. But Trump is saying we knew it was going to happen. They were going to retaliate. We were wondering how big the retaliation was going to be. Right now, it looks like it's very tame. It's political theater. And Trump is saying we don't want more engagement in the region. Now, what does that mean exactly? I mean, does it mean we're completely done? Obviously not, but it means possibly no more offensive engagement. We're still waiting on the status updates of those nuclear facilities and just how much the United States destroyed within them, especially Fordo. But apparently, Trump is saying we're going to try and de-escalate. He said we want peace. Obviously, he's going to say that after striking them. It's not going to go over well. Why would Iran accept any type of peace deal after they just got struck? But the dynamics of the situation are the United States is significantly stronger than Iran, especially when you're talking about some type of war with Iran where there's no ground troop involvement. If it's just, Iran cannot reach the U.S., so it's a mismatch. And even though they can reach Israel, it's been reported they're running out of missiles. So whether or not that's true, whether or not as Iran is as weak as people say they are, this does look like, at least at this point with the information we have right now, at least a weak response. It's a weak response. And so hopefully it stays that way. And that might be able to calm things down rather than back and forth escalating. I really don't think there would be. If Iran did have a serious escalation, I think the United States would do something to make sure there wasn't another escalation, if you know what I mean. And so maybe Iran is scared about that. But either way, I mean, we'll see what comes of it. These are good updates. You've got oil down. You've got the Strait of Hormuz still open. They really can't close it. They can disrupt it. And so, I mean, if oil only spikes to, $76, $77, it's there's not a huge domestic impact at all to the U.S. if that's what it ends up going to. Even $80 wouldn't be a big impact at all. I mean, ideally, we would like it lower, and without this conflict, if there was a nuclear deal, undoubtedly it would be lower. But, the big problems become when it gets to like $90 or $100, especially for a prolonged period of time. And that's when it becomes an issue. So hopefully we can avoid that. And we don't exactly know how this is going to play out just because Trump said he would be in favor of regime change. That's going to involve the United States, we would imagine, in some way through destabilizing Iran. Maybe they'll let Israel try and do it with just U.S. supporting Israel, which people also don't like. But it would be easier to stomach because there would be no U.S. direct involvement there. So maybe that's what it ends up being. But either way, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you like the video down below. Also follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.